Welcome back to the This Week in Fantasy series. I'm your host, Venomous Stare. This week we're going to be reviewing Week 1 of the NFL and previewing Week 2. Joining me is my incredibly intelligent and talented cousin Spencer, who's also my 2v2 partner, coming off of a huge week against his hated rival, The Gouch. Spencer, how's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty good.
Good.
Glad we could execute week 1.
Yep, I feel like Week 1 was pretty low quality as far as the games themselves go. What were your thoughts on this overall? Did the teams look very sharp to you, or did they look sort of like it was another preseason game?
I disagree. I felt like there were a ton of really close, good games. Like the Kansas City Browns game was pretty good. Came down to the wire. I mean, yeah, there are a couple other ones. I don't remember the exact games. So I remember thinking, man, it feels like more games are close this season than last season. Though it could just be that those are the games that I saw or the games I was watching.
Oh,
I don't know.
I agree with the closeness. You had Rams, Raiders, Ravens going to overtime, Vikings, Bengals going to overtime. The Cowboys game was close.
The Redskins Giants too literally came down to the final possession, and the outcome was changed by the penalty when the kicker on the last play missed the first one, made the second one to beat the Giants. That was sort of cute.
That's true. That was a hilarious collapse by the Giants going offsides to give the other team a free win. Those guys just can't get out of their own way, and they are a perpetual laughingstock. The fact that Jason Garrett went to New York makes me so happy. But that was a Week 2 game, remember. There were a lot of close games. I just feel like a lot of it was two teams that couldn't get out of their own way. But we can talk to... Go ahead.
I was like, good point. I forgot that was a Week 2 game. It's like it sort of all runs together.
Definitely. Whenever I think about how the games are a little sloppy, what I'm sort of referring to is how the Titans couldn't get out of their own way. The Lions were getting firing squatted beyond recognition until the last quarter, in which the Niners just choked terrifically to lose the spread. And the Bengals-Vikings, it almost felt as though the Bengals-Vikings game was going to go on until Ben got the max amount of points possible, because goes into overtime, Vikings can't score, Bengals can't score, Joe Mixon keeps racking up all these yards. It was a very frustrating week with my matchup specifically, so let's go ahead and start to review that. We see Matt Stafford and Lamar Jackson. Stafford looked exactly how I thought he would. Poised, composed, part of a good offense. What were your thoughts on the Rams and their opening salvo?
I was very impressed. I think that this is I sort of expected it a little bit, but I think they surpassed my expectations. I mean, this is going to be a team that really is a big threat down the stretch, both from fantasy and real football. I also sort of feel that Cup was the main beneficiary of the new offense. You didn't see a lot out of Woods. I wouldn't be one to expect that to continue all season, for instance, but I do think it's worth monitoring, and it could very, very easily it could just be one of those things that Stafford has always been a guy who sort of hasn't had two good receivers at a time historically. And I'm not saying that he can't. I'm just saying some guys just really like working it to their number one, and they're not as good at getting to the number two. And is that the case? I believe Woods only saw 4 targets, which off of his ADP is pretty staggeringly low.
Yeah. Well, whenever I think about the Rams offense, this was an offense that it has the mind behind it in Sean McVay. It has the offensive weapons with Kupp and Wood, and back in the day, Gurley. Not so much of a run focus anymore. I feel like they're definitely favoring the pass, but they were always bottlenecked by Goff. And now that Goff is gone and the Rams don't have any first-round picks for the next few years, they're in win-now mode, and I consider them the heavy favorite for that division. Who do you think is going to win that division, Spence?
They've got to be the favorite, for sure. I mean, they've traded their future for the present, and they were already, I would say, not drawing dead before the trade.
Agreed. They were pretty solid before, even with Goff. It's going to be an interesting storyline to follow this entire season, how Goff does versus how the Rams do. Because remember, when the Rams went to the Super Bowl, there was just non-stop Goff slurping. This was a squad that, even though they had all this talent around them, people sort of pretended like Goff was the main reason they were succeeding, when I felt like it was really the opposite. Goff was actually hindering them. So I saw a lot of people say the Arizona Cardinals were going to be last place and they were going to be bottom feeders. A ton of different predictions I saw this from. And I
Well,
thought,
I mean, that was a bad prediction. I don't know who you're talking to
yeah,
that made that prediction.
I'm talking about 5 or 6 different publications. And I sort of saw that and said to myself, well, I actually think they're going to be above average. Where do you see the Cardinals finishing this season?
I mean, they got to win 10 games. The biggest storyline, I mean, we knew the offense was going to be good. And I forgot who they ended up playing. I sort of forget off the top of my head, but I remember them looking very good defensively.
They smashed the Titans. The Titans looked inept.
Correct.
Tannehill and Julio looked
and
like
the Titans were like a good team, and I sort of think that they are a good team this year. They were last year, and I think that they are at least a above average team, if not a good team this year. You know, I felt like they didn't take a step back. If anything, they took a step forward, upgrading a lot of positions, you know, on their team. Like, I think the one that comes to mind, I'd say front and center would be the Julio acquisition. Where, like, yeah, he's injury prone and he wasn't involved week 1, but, like, he's undisputedly a top 5, like, wide receiver. Like, or maybe a top 10 at this stage, agent stage, but, like, he's a top guy, and you sort of think that him with AJ Green should be like one of the best passing offenses and should open up the run game too. So to me, that their struggles were sort of unexpected. The question is, was it their bad or the Arizona's improved defense? And I tend to lean more on Arizona improved their defense and like some of those early rewards are showing.
I agree. I think it's a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. A.J. Brown did finally get targeted late in it was the third quarter in which he caught his touchdown, I believe. But basically the Titans had several drives that fizzled out. It looked like Tannehill was really trying to force the ball to Julio, and it looked pretty disjointed. And finally, he was like, screw it, I'm just going back to Brown. A.J. Green, of course, on the Cardinals, 2 A.J.s with color names. And the Titans just looked very bad and disjointed, but I don't think this is going to be one of those things that is permanent. I think they will find their footing again, and they're going to be sort of the team that we saw last year. Derrick Henry looked especially bad in this game. 17 touches, 3.4 yards a carry, no touchdowns. But when I see the Cardinals offense, this is a high-powered offense with a lot of pop to it. So do you think that the Cardinals will make the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You know that both AFC and NFC West didn't lose a game. Isn't that pretty insane?
That's crazy. That's really insane.
I mean, yeah, that's bananas. I mean, we sort of know, like, I mean, the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West, and I think at an NFC West, I think that's going to be where the wild card comes from, surely.
Agreed.
And like, it's got to be the Rams and Cardinals. Like, if you were to like say, hey, pick your favorites, the Seahawks will be in the mix. The Niners, like, they won't be a bad team, but I just think they'll get buried by like the other talent in the division. You know.
Agreed.
God, this NFC team East, like, their record might be a little below cumulatively like 400. Like, I'm just like looking at it and like, it's rough. It's rough on the eyes, man.
Well, you have Fitzmagic's already hurt severely. He'll be out for at least 6 weeks. The Cowboys are the Cowboys, one of the most overrated squads in recent NFL history, especially when you look at Dak and Zeke and these guys with such name recognition that really don't follow up to what they're supposed to be. And then the Giants are so bad they've already lost twice, can't get out of their own way, and somehow think that Daniel Jones is the next savior. So
I mean, he's gonna. I will say my one takeaway from last week is he's gonna get like the most garbage of fantasy points ever. Like, because he's gonna randomly rush for 100 rushing yards and a tutty like every other week. So even if he can't do literally anything on the ground, which will be the case a lot of the time, he'll sort of have like a really high floor, which will be sort of nice if you're QB starved. Though, like, why are you going to him? I feel like there's so many other guys I'd rather go to. But
Definitely. But within the context of the Giants, you're right. I think if they want to score, Daniel Jones is going to have to do a sizable amount of running, as weird as it sounds, because he just
I mean,
doesn't.
he's gotten 20 fantasy points in standard the last 2 weeks, which like I mean, that's what you want out of your QB. And it's not like they don't have weapons offensively if you just can manage to click a little bit in the passing game. You know, I don't know. I think it's worth noting that like he's not a sexy name. I don't think they'll be good, but like it's sort of like rushing is sort of in standard a little bit of a cheat code. So I think that's just worth monitoring.
True, although he is very prone to the blow up start. He's a turnover machine, fumbles a lot, throws a lot of picks. So I feel like that is a big threat. If you're like, oh, I got a bye week, I'm gonna start Danny Dimes, and then oh well, shit, he had his 2 fumble game and never found the end zone. Isn't it funny to see that the NFC North has yet to get a single win? Historically, we think of this as a decent division minus the Lions, but Packers looked atrocious. The Bears are going to lose a few games on purpose with the Red Rocket and then put in Fields, who will be underwhelming. And the Vikings defense was not very good at all last season compared to what it's been historically. And I don't think that team is really a threat. And the Lions are the Lions with Goff. So I think the NFC North is almost as bad as the NFC East.
Yeah, uh, I think we're overreacting to the Packers week one. I think the Saints defense is just really good, and the Packers came out flat. I would expect them to be better going forward, and I think the Vikings are better than it sounds like a lot of people are giving them credit for. Their defense isn't amazing, but I think offensively they're above average and get the job done defensively to win some games. You know.
I also think the Packers are better than putting up 3 points, but how much better? Like, do you think that they'll win 11 games? Do you think that they can win the first round of the playoffs? Like, how would you quantify that?
I would tend to just it's just a weird fluke. They came out flat. Aaron Rodgers was late to camp. Maybe some of that played into it. Some of the noise around their org. I mean, all that stuff. Like it's not healthy. That being said, like they still have Adams, one of the best receivers in the league. You know, they're offensively they brought pretty much all their major guys back and they added more. And defensively, I mean, they should be adequate. I mean, they should. I would probably, if you gave me an over under of 9 games, I would still probably take it the over. They should still win 9 games. The real interesting thing was Jameis Winston was insanely serviceable, if not good.
Yeah, what was it,
Um,
5 touchdowns?
5 touchdowns, 150 yards. The yardage total has me a little worried. Sort of, I think that they were holding him back some. But the important thing is, this is a guy that can make the. We know he can sling the rock, right? Like he's shown that. Yeah, he's slinging it to the other team a lot, but he can sling it. So the ability to not turn the ball over and take a high-powered, talented Saints offense to a 38-point game is like to me very impressive and very noteworthy. Like, like I think you see two wild card, or like sorry, you see two playoff teams in this division. It's got to be
Agreed.
Saints and Bucks. There's no way both of them don't make it. Like that. That seems crazy to have another take.
Oh, I agree with that. And I think the Panthers are somewhere between average and, I don't know, like somewhere between like 4 out of 10 and 6 out of 10. I don't think they're a real threat. I think the Falcons are going to be terrible, though. The Falcons got absolutely embarrassed by the Eagles. And I think
Yeah,
they really underestimated the rapport that Julio and Matt Ryan had together in terms of how much value that gave them, even though it was a huge cap hit. That was like pretty much their only win condition. And if you watch the Falcons game, they're actually trying to run a lot, and there's a reason they only put up 6 points. They're not a running team. Then when we saw Julio on the Titans, it looked very disjointed. He didn't really look like Julio, wearing the number 2, not really in sync with his quarterback. I think that some people might have underestimated that Matt Ryan Julio Jones chemistry, And maybe without each other, both of those guys are a couple points less on a 1 to 10 scale than we thought. Maybe Matt Ryan's like a 5 out of 10 guy instead of a 7 out of 10 guy. Maybe Julio has a really off year and doesn't break 900 yards. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on that. Like this Julio and Matt Ryan combo was one of, in the last 10 years, the most potent out there. So what are your thoughts on these two guys?
I mean, there's chemistry there for sure. I think the bigger story is, at least from week one, it sort of appeared like the thesis that Julio alleviated some of the pressure for Calvin Ridley is definitely, turned out to be at least true week one. I don't expect Ridley to not be viable down the stretch. I mean, at the end of the day, what you said stuck out to me. They tried to run the ball more. They were down like 20 points, like 2 scores most of that game. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I don't think they're like, even Mike Davis, he succeeded in the pass game for the Panthers last year. So it's very odd to me that they were trying to pound the rock. But that was a very good observation. That was something that really stuck out to me when I was looking at some of the team analytics after last week. I sort of expect they suck defensively. That hasn't changed. They're going to be in a boat race every week, playing from behind. And I think that they're going to quickly learn that their only way to be competitive is to sling the rock.
Yep.
In addition, sort of a lot of their talent is the guys they want to develop. Think like the young tight end they just drafted,
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts. Like, he's going to be a guy who's going to develop based on them slinging the rocks. There's a sort of other ulterior motives as well for that, besides just winning and being competitive, for them to sling the rock. So yeah, I think that we'll see a higher pass percentage. They might be one of the highest pass percentages in the league, just out of necessity by the end of the year, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I expect them to pass it, be bad, but like be very fantasy viable, like all of their guys. Also, sort of shocking was a guy that I envisioned him being a very big part of their offense. Gage got 0 targets or 1 target. He almost had no involvement last week, which I'm sort of sitting here thinking, like, even last year when he came in as the number 2 guy, he was like getting 5 to 7 targets and being very, very involved. So that was sort of shocking to me.
Right.
And some of that might have been their poor game plan to just run it. Who knows? But they're definitely a team to watch down the stretch. Will they be so inept that there'll be no fantasy viable? There'll be like no fantasy viability week to week on the offensive side, or they just like, or will they, out of sheer necessity, start slinging the rock and like Matt Ryan's going to go for 30 every other week, and these other weapons will benefit? Who knows? That's definitely a story to monitor down the stretch. So.
Whenever I watched the game, I sort of thought it had a lot to do with coaching. It felt to me like when they offloaded Julio and they were doing 2-a-days, the coach would be walking around the practice saying shit like, we're not just going to air it out anymore. This is going to be a balanced attack. There is no Julio anymore. We're not just going to throw it. And then they're down by a big lead early. They're playing from behind, and he's like, I got to prove that I'm the coach. Call another run. Call another run. Like, I agree. They're not going to do that shit all year. They're going to be perma playing from behind. Their defense sucks floppy. So, I think the coach is going to get canned if he continues to use the same terrible build orders. And in general, even if he starts to air it out more, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL because they can't stop anyone. I think if you have a matchup for an offensive guy against the Falcons, you're going to be licking your chops, whether it's a running back or a receiver.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure.
Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the fantasy-specific review. We had me against the King of Funny here. He took me down. And this was an interesting match because I was ahead early, and despite getting 100 yards, Keenan Allen didn't have a touchdown. And Aaron and I were watching the game together, and Justin Herbert was in the red zone, and he got called for a fumble on a ball which went 20 yards forward into the end zone. Did you see this play, Spencer?
I did not.
Well, it was absolutely ludicrous, and they reviewed it and held up the call, and it ended up being a turnover. But that was a frustrating factor. Of course, Aaron lost by like 8 points. I was leading going into Monday Night Football by a handful. And another thing that jumped out at me was how inept Washington looked, especially in the first half. They couldn't get anything going. They looked super disjointed, and then Fitzmagic got hurt. Thankfully, we saw in week 2 in the Giants Washington game that it turns out Scary Terry back to his old form, but Washington looked terribly disjointed. And the other thing I think that jumped out to me about this game was the Bills were shutting out the Steelers around halftime, and they had a pick six that got called back and another interception that got called back, which of course would have been huge fantasy points. And then they spit up all over themselves and not only allowed the Steelers to break the shutout, but win the whole fucking game. So that looked like it could have been 10 plus points turns into a measly 2. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier was how the Bengals game went into overtime. And my goodness, Joe Mixon just got so many touches compared to what it really seemed like he should have. And when Detroit was coming back ridiculously, Swift was really benefiting. So, very frustrating game to watch for me. Very frustrating game to follow. Tyreek Hill has a Tyreek Hill day. Cincinnati receiver Higgins finds the end zone. And overall, a very solid win for the King of Funny. And Barkley was highly limited and virtually did nothing. So,
The biggest thing here for Ben's team was a guy I liked, but I felt like there are a lot of question marks. Swift. I thought he reached for him a bit.
third round.
And you saw both running backs be very involved. Him and I think the other guy is Jamal Williams.
Yep.
But the bigger data piece was you saw if you look really deep in snap share and routes run, you see that Swift is going to be the favored guy. And even if they both share the ball a little bit, especially in PPR, but even in standard, like this is going to be a guy who, like, in terms of what you want out of an RB2, is going to be very serviceable. And to me, that means that Ben's going to have a very strong team, because that was sort of one of the big question marks on his team was, like, he sort of has a bunch of these guys. Like, I mean, Davis is sort of still questionable, but I think, you know, as an RB3, he'll be serviceable. It was like, oh, if Swift is getting him 5 to 8 every week versus 10 to 12 to, 18 on a good week, like sort of like he did last week when he gets a tutty. Like that's really strong out of your, like, I think it was his 4th round pick. Like that's sort of what he needs is that 18-point upside, that 10-point consistency. And we sort of saw that. So Ben has a real strong team here, in my opinion.
Agreed. And considering Atlanta's brand new strats and build orders where they're just going to run it when they're at an insurmountable disadvantage, maybe Mike Davis, he goes from being like a sort of squint and start him in a bye week guy to, well, shit, if they're going to give him the ball that many times, he looks like a pretty damn good flex. So Ben definitely looking strong.
And he's sort of build order proof too, because even if they decide they want to pass it more, I was sort of high on Davis too, though there wasn't a lot of certainty. Even if they decide they're going to pass it more. I mean, yeah, he just popped up. He got 15, but he got 6 targets. And if they decide to pass it more, maybe that goes from 10 to 8 targets. And I mean, yeah, those targets weren't super valuable, but if he breaks, I mean, I think he'll have value, and he might not be the funnest guy to play, but out of your flex, like, he's sort of going to get you at least 5, and he still has 15, 20-point upside if things just break his way, which is sort of what you're looking for. We're out of the flex, in my opinion.
Agreed. All right, so we can move on from this game. A solid W for the King of Funny, despite the fact that I put up a respectable 99. I definitely feel like that game, because of the games that dragged on and became weird for his running backs, he definitely picked up a lot of extra points. So here, clap for starts Mahomes, who puts up 33, but he still loses. Mike Evans has a terrible week against an awful secondary. And I think you're going to see a lot more games like this from Evans than you would 5 years ago. Tampa has a ton of offensive options, and he's way more prone to put up goose eggs as opposed to when he was playing with Jameis and they were playing.
And he's not the receiving yards guy. He sort of has a tight end like production out of wide receiver,
right?
Where he's sort of
touchdown.
Exactly.
Those fucking fade routes in the corner and whatnot.
Yeah, so he's going to put up a couple games like this over the course of the season, I'd expect. The biggest thing that I was thinking this week after it was over Clyde Ford's a guy who's got a lot of holes in his team, and he could benefit a lot from a trade, though I don't expect that he'll do that.
Yeah, you know what he is going to do is start starting Smith, the rookie Devonta Smith, the rookie from Alabama, you know. He showed a nice little rapport with Hurts. He might become Hurts' favorite target. I would expect Clatford to look to
Yeah,
Smith here because obviously Cooper is going to get a lot of looks, but Randall Cobb, how are you? There's really no way you're going to start him again after how the
yeah.
Packers looked.
I thought that was a horrible. Like he shouldn't have started him last week. Like this is not a guy who projected well, in my opinion. He was fourth on the depth chart, behind Lazard and Marcus Valdez Scantling, and they had sort of gone from three wide receiver sets to two, a higher percentage of the time, and just with like two running backs and a tight end instead of like three wide receivers wide. So I'm just sitting here like, what? He's not even involved in the three wide receiver sets. I'm gonna pull up his routes run. He only had like 21 routes run, which is like a 38%. I mean, those are not stats you want to. I mean, before the week I could have told you that. So that was sort of a poor choice in my opinion. I think he had better options on the bench. So
Yeah, Clapfor I've noticed is a guy who likes rookies, and definitely expect him to start rolling with some of these guys. And I think if Lawrence has a good week or even a couple of good weeks, he should look to. I mean, if you're going to draft rookies and want to roll with them, why not try to offload Mahomes to like one of these mini Chiefs stands in our league, and then you put yourself in a position where you can fill some of the other holes you have.
yeah, I mean, I was thinking more like there's tons of guys like Weston, for instance. Weston has a ton of depth, so he could trade one of these top tier guys for two mediocre guys and fill some of these positions where I feel like he has holes. Or tight end. Like I'm not like I think Pitts could be okay, but I mean like he could get like an okay wide receiver and a decent tight end for like Cooper. Like he could do like a I don't remember who Austin has right now, but he could do like Kittle and wide receiver for Cooper, and then sort of he's gonna have a decrease from Cooper, but he's not getting two out of tight end. I don't know. I feel like there's I haven't run through every combo, but I feel like there's plenty of trades that would make sense
Oh,
for him to
definitely,
do.
definitely. Whenever you look at Lily's team, how scared of it are you?
Yeah, to be honest, like I was shocked. It's like every year she drafts like questionable teams with tons of reaches and weird shit, and every year I she seems to perform. It's a pretty scary team week one. Hawkinson looked to be the focal point of that offense in Detroit, and he's going to be their number one target, and likely will have 10 targets every week or close to it.
Yeah, you were on that one. When I was watching the game, I noticed like Spencer was totally right about that. You projected that whenever we were drafting. I don't know if it got included in the super cut, but I remember you saying Hawkinson was a good pick, and he was getting so many mid-range targets, and this guy really runs with some extreme ferocity. So I really
Yeah,
like
you can
that pick.
you can see that you can see the talent like you saw it last year. It's just sometimes when the talent's there, it doesn't always translate when there's more volume involved. But yeah, he's going to get 10 targets every week, and some weeks 15 if they're really behind. They're a bad Lions team that'll play from behind a lot. The
True.
running backs will be involved. They literally might not have a viable wide receiver, which is sort of like one of the things I was thinking about when trying to decide if any of their wide receivers are worth drafting, because both the running backs might get 10, 15 targets combined. So yeah, that their focus will be running back and tight end production. But yeah, her team's scary. None of the names individually really scared me, but like you can't question the production. Um, what's insane is Lily's about to start Jared Cook next week. That's the real story.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to the matchup previews. Let's go ahead and review Weston beating Jackson. So what jumped out to you about this game here, Spence?
Zeke's horrible.
Oh, and not only is he bad, but he looks as though he's quit so much of the time.
Sort of, we already touched on Woods not being a huge beneficiary. I sort of one of the things that I strongly disagreed with, among a couple things, with what Jackson's appearance was. Oh, any good owner can get 5 out of tight end, right? Yeah, that's just a horrible take. Tight end is a top. It's like a top heavy position, and there's only like 5 viable guys, and so yeah, that was just a bad take. And I think when I was doing a ton of drafts, like a ton of drafts, the thing I consistently noticed was when I wouldn't get a couple guys at tight end, my team, like one of the top guys, my team consistently seemed bad. And I didn't. I played the streaming game the last 2 years, and it wasn't something I wanted to do again. So yeah, I think that's sort of ironic that he had that strong take. Mostart being out for the rest of the season, sort of expected. I didn't understand why people had so much value in him. This is a guy who's been continually hurt the last 2 years. I'd say he's had 5 injuries. It wasn't a matter of if he's going to get hurt. It was a matter of when. It happened to be week 1. I actually thought about holding his backup just for that reason, but I had other things that were more important. So this is a big blow to Jackson's team. Hurts performed, so that's good for him.
Looked pretty good too.
Yeah, I don't the big thing was the rushing upside. That helps all guys. So yeah, he'll be a good guy. It was against Atlanta, so maybe not take too much.
Temper your expectations a little. It was against the Falcons. I was just about to say that.
But I do think he'll be one of those guys who I think he'll perform pretty like he'll be better than a streaming option. I think before the year's over. So not too much to say here. And Weston's team, I mean, he got the job done. He got some outlier performances from wide receiver.
One thing that Jackson said was Deebo Samuel is very talented and was a good pick. I sort of said that I wasn't that high on Deebo. Where do you stand on this guy? He had a great week 1.
I actually thought I thought it was a 1A, 1B situation, but I thought he was the 1B. I thought that Ayuk was the number 1 wide receiver who literally got 0 points, and I don't know if he got targets, but off the top of my head. But yeah, I think it was an outlier game. Couple of outliers.
Couple of outliers.
But I think it'll be more evenly spaced, and I think Kittle will see more involvement. But I mean, Deebo's had talent, so I think, I mean, not to say he's a bad pick, but like saying he's going to have 20 points every week is ridiculous. I think he'll be, hover around 10, 15, when he's real involved, week to week. But yeah, good pick by Wes. I like that one. So
excellent. We can move on. Let's talk about Cam Joke, the potential most scary team. Cameron is like a werewolf in the sense that a lot of people are fearful of him at certain times and not fearful of him very much at all in others. This is a guy, it feels like at the beginning of every season someone will say, I don't know, this might be Cameron's year. His team looks really good and he has these sort of players that you don't even really have to micro. It'll be hard to screw up, and he figures out a way to do it every year. So obviously, Rodgers completely shitting the bed and embarrassing himself just jumps out right at you because you can usually count on Rodgers for 15 plus, and Cam won by 17. So, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, that's a good point. Mark looks surprisingly scary. Like the Sterling Shepard, though, like a heinous reach. Like he was super involved this week 2 as well, and he does look like the focal point over Galladay, which to me is surprising. I thought Galladay would be the focal point, but I think it might be Shepard. So he drafted in like the 6th round, like it was still a heinous reach,
like it was 2011.
Yeah, but like basically he might get close to what he paid for it in terms of draft capital. Kupp is a monster, and I think we'll have like a career year this year if Stafford stays healthy. Julio should rebound. I mean, Kelsey, there's a reason why, yeah, I mean, the only way he doesn't get there to his draft capital is if he gets hurt.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be a monster. The interesting thing, and the thing that I'm actually monitoring for next week, is Najee Harris. So this is a guy who nearly played every single snap for the Steelers. So like in terms of workload, you don't necessarily like. I mean, he was definitely involved in terms of touches, but I think that I think he'll rebound next week against Vegas. This is a Vegas front that we saw like the Ravens like fourth and fifth string running backs carve up. Like some of the guys literally didn't even see the playbook till 3 days before the game that we're playing. So like I think he'll have a bounce back week against Vegas, and like he'll be really good. And I think if you can trade for him in any of your leagues after like the sort of flat week one, I would go for it.
Buy him low, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean I don't think he'll be incredible, but like I think he's going to be more like an 8 to 10 guy, not a 5 guy. So
That's interesting to note. Of course, Julio Jones came up flaccid. That was another thing that really hurt Mark. We spoke about that at length earlier. And the Steelers' defense, it looked like they were really getting sort of embarrassed, and the Bills were going to run away with that game, and then came out in the second half and looked like a different team. So we can move on from talking about this. I do just want to point out that Ted Lasso's dream team is an abominable name. Absolutely fucking terrible.
yeah.
Here we had a phenomenal match. This is you versus the Gouch. Go ahead and take it away. Obviously, you were sweating it the whole way through. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it came down to Monday, and I had my odds at winning around 25%. I felt like an idiot because I started Josh Jacobs after much deliberation over Melvin Gordon. Josh Jacobs ended up punching in twice, but watching Melvin Gordon, who got 18 and was like very, very involved for the Broncos.
The Raiders played on Monday night, so you had to see Gordon put up the points on your bench, and then it was a big question.
I was literally I had him started until 30 minutes before when I saw that Jacobs was leaning towards playing, and then I saw him get downgraded like right after the 3 o'clock injury report on Sunday, and I'm just like, great.
Oh crappa.
Like typically when you see that, it's very likely that your guy is like not going to play. So I thought he was going to draw me a 0 or be a suit up no play. So I was sort of scared, but he ended up getting just involved enough to like get it done. He actually didn't even play week 2 because I think he was sort of banged up in week 1 and they wanted him to get healthy. So yeah, he's out this week. So thankfully, basically I'm thankful that he played and he got 2 because like obviously I needed that. The bigger story from that was Sweat.
What'd you say? You cut out.
Guess how many. I said the bigger story was guess how many targets Waller got.
Oh, I don't know, 8. 19. Holy shit!
Yeah,
That's insanity.
Remember when I told you, hey, I think Waller might be a better option than Kelsey because like he's gonna be so involved. That was why. I saw this sort of upside for him, and some like I want to be honest, him and Carr looked really disconnected in the first half, and he was getting a lot of ineffective targets and overthrows that like if Carr was more on, like that could have been a 30-point game for Waller, like straight up. Like he had one bomb that just was an easy touchdown, and Carr didn't see him. But yeah, I think the Raiders are gonna like their wide receivers look pretty crap. I think that they're gonna play a lot through Waller, and Waller like might be the tight end 1 if he can stay healthy. So like fingers crossed there. But yeah, I mean, also interesting is my team sort of came out flat in some ways. Like sort of as I told you when we talked, like Chase Edmonds, y'all were saying he would get 5. I sort of saw that he would be involved in both receiving and running. He was way more efficient than Connor, averaging 5 yards a carry versus Connor's like 3 or 2. Like he's the better back. It's just a question of whether he'll get the volume or how much it'll be split. Moore and Ridley both were very like involved, but sort of didn't punch it in like you'd expect. So like there's going to be weeks where both of those guys punch it in, and if all my guys can get going, I mean I think I've got a pretty juggernaut of a team, and I'm also pretty deep where like I sort of have got guys that got me 10 on my bench at every major position. So I'm feeling pretty good about this year so far. it's a long season and injuries happen, but I was pretty happy with how my guys came out and battled through adversity to pull out that week 1 win in Monday night. I think Sigach's running back sort of had flat weeks, which helped. And Tanyan, who I thought was being way overdrafted,
Agreed.
Did nothing. So
Total hype pick, Tanyan.
yeah,
I don't think Henry is going to look as bad as he did in week 1 in these coming weeks. So the fact that he was awful, not just like, oh, he didn't find the end zone, but he couldn't get anything going. For like the first 3 quarters of the game, he was averaging like less than 2 yards a touch. I mean, he looked really bad.
yeah. Obviously that's a fine pick. Gibson is the guy that I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but he was one of those guys that I just felt like his pick was just getting it was getting too high relative to the range of outcomes, and we saw him be sort of okay on limited work against the Giants. I don't know. I think he might have been overdrafted a bit. It's not that he'll be bad, but like where he was going, you were expecting a mid-tier RB2, and I think he might be a little below that on the season.
Like a flex option. I agree.
Yeah, you saw J.D. McKissick become really involved for the Redskins, so it's sort of timeshare.
Agreed. And to me, that's not a team that's going to be playing from ahead much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move on. Big win for you.
I mean, Christian will still be a threat. I mean, not to take any. I mean, his team is still good. Tanyan won't be he'll be serviceable. Maybe sneak into the top 12. He seems pretty deep. You know, I feel like his team could definitely still in play to win the division for sure, and definitely very in play for a wild card if the division gets tucked away by myself down the stretch. So yeah, he's definitely one of the stronger teams. So
Jerry Jeudy out for 6 weeks. Michael Gallup out for 5 weeks. He's gonna have to juggle those guys, which it's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird because
just drop Gallup. It's not hard.
I love it. The drop machine. Seagouch would always make this joke when we played backyard football and someone would have a drop, especially Cam. He would go, pan hands, ding, and Gallup has the worst case of fucking pan hands I've ever seen. The guy couldn't
Yeah, he looked horrible. He looked horrible in that game.
I mean, he looked horrible all of last season, too. You can ask Rampy about that one.
Kappa. No, like I was definitely like sort of wrong on him. I thought that his deep threat potential could make up for his pan hands, sort of Kedgin Jr., but like
he just drops those too.
Yeah, well,
and Dak can't get it to him that effectively, so
yeah, there's that, and then their other weapons are just so more viable now that like I don't think they have to lean on him as much as they used to. Which before they sort of could deal with the drops, but he get enough volume. But now it's like he's probably going to get like a couple 10, 20-point games over the season, but it's going to be like every third week. And
it's gonna
why
be
would you want to do?
It's going to be sandwiched in between shit performances that burn you too.
It's like especially when you look at like he's got Williams who's going to be involved, and then he's got that other guy for the Bengals, Chase, who it's like he has no reason to like keep that wide receiver depth.
Agreed. All right, we can move on to this game, which was sort of a joke. If you look at the scoring across the board, these two teams literally put up the bottom 2 amount of points. So what do you think about this one? I think that Herbert and Tannehill both look like shit and are definitely more talented than these numbers represent.
Yeah, I think Herbert will bounce back big next week.
Agreed. Cowboys defense, I'm penciling him in for 25, not to get ahead of ourselves, but he's going to light the Cowboys up.
I have him as QB7, going for 22.
DeMarcus Lawrence went down for the boys, hurt severely. He won't play. That's really what their entire pass rush is predicated off of, and it wasn't even that good to begin with. So I'm expecting huge things.
Aaron sort of got the AU trap, which was I thought he was the number 1 wide receiver. I think he was on the depth charts. That's sort of what he was last year. I tend to think he'll bounce back and it'll be more split, but I would definitely wait and bench him in the meantime. Who does Aaron have on his bench? Yeah, just start Landry. Don't overthink it. Or Corey Davis for that matter.
OBJ is still injured, so Landry would be the number 1 guy.
Landry is a must-start guy when Odell Beckham Jr.'s out, basically.
Corey Davis
And
was the
then
guy that was a big part of the offense and found the end zone twice. Aaron was like really happy about him picking Davis. How much value do you think he has going forward?
he's a Jet.
Right, but they don't have Gase or Darnold anymore, so how much does that change things?
He's a Jet.
Okay, I'm in agreement, but I
That
just thought I
that
should
that
ask.
that's a bit. I mean, he'll have value when they look more competent, but like I just when these teams have been bad so long, it's just really hard for me to like want to jump back in, especially when there's so many viable options out there. Like I just think about how many non-Jets I can draft that like it's like why do I want to even carry a Jet on my roster? You know, there's just so many more talented guys out there. I don't know.
I agree.
And then, despite claiming he had a top 5 tight end in Andrews, Austin's tight end combined for less than 10.
Oh, that's brutal. That is freaking brutal. And Austin's sitting here saying to himself, like, well, I can't start both of them. Whenever you do this, whenever you whenever you make a trade and you sacrifice depth in one spot for depth where you're already deep, yeah, I mean, you're sort of sitting here having to bench one of these guys every week. At what point?
Funnily enough, the trade might actually end up being good because I think Mark Andrews like looked horrible and like might be super inconsistent, uninvolved.
So you'll think he needs Kittle.
Yes, he might need Kittle, who
That's
I think
pretty funny.
will be better. So like ironically, like even though if you would have asked me last week if I thought the trade like didn't make sense, I would have agreed with what you and Jackson said. Uh, I'm sort of like changed my tune a little bit, like somewhat as like a bit, but like genuinely like it might end up being a good trade. Like if Andrews is just super inconsistent, like even if Andrews has 20 points every fifth week, like that's at a time. I mean that's better than like streaming, but like I don't know. To me, the Ravens look like they're just going to really struggle to pass it this year, and Lamar's going to need to rush it a lot.
Yeah. Obviously,
And then,
the Packers look disjointed in Week 1. Do you think Adams will finish ranked top 5 in receiving fantasy
oh,
points?
for sure, without a doubt.
So you're not worried about him at all?
I mean, it was sort of a weird, like at New Orleans, but like away game, and I don't know how much that came into the Green Bay. You think it would affect the Saints more, but they probably got more settled in the weird. Look, I forget where it was. The game was like
Florida.
held somewhere else because of the hurricane. Yeah,
Florida.
So like I wonder how much of it was like maybe the home team was comfortable, but the visiting team. I'm just that's like pure like narrative stuff, but who knows with this sort of thing? Maybe that's why they came out. Rodgers late coming to playing camp, But long story short, like
You're not putting much stock into that.
it's 1 week, and this is a guy who's had a long track of success, both Rodgers and Adams. So I expect Adams like easily top 10. I still think probably top 5. I mean, he had an off week and he had 6. Like, how many guys can do that? Like the worst week,
True.
So
Okay.
yeah,
We can move on
not
to.
too much more here. I think Aaron will recover. He had some bad luck, and I still think he's got talent.
All right. We can start the much anticipated preview. Start with me versus AB, a match before the Thursday night game started. I was projected to lose, only putting up like 82. But what happened is Scary Terry McLaurin went back to his original form, reeled one in, 100 plus yards. Barkley, still banged up, thankfully got over 5. I didn't really have any good options on my bench as far as running back goes. A lot of the guys on my running back bench are sort of like the tier 2 guys, or a tier 2 guy behind an injury-prone guy that hasn't gotten hurt yet. So I didn't have much of an option. Of course, Saquon was my first-round pick. I knew he would be limited. I didn't expect much out of him after week 1, but you're kind of okay with 7, considering it looked like he was still having some knee trouble. Hopefully this doesn't persist for me. by week
Good,
6,
good news. He has a nice long
yeah,
rest period
that's a
because it
great
was a
point.
Thursday game. Because
Great point.
I have him in another league, and I've been sort of thinking about what to do. So
Yeah, do you think by week 6 he'll be back to his rookie year form? Not necessarily putting up that level of points, but that level of talent and ability?
yeah, I don't think that that's the issue. I think the issue is
Jason Garrett?
once injuries show up with these guys, it's sort of hard to believe in him down the stretch. That's sort of my big fear with him is will he hold up durability wise? But I think the talent's there, and I think the workload will get there. And if he gets 30-40% more touches, like he gets 10, 12 points without punching it in, which is like RB1 numbers, so I'm not too worried.
What are your thoughts on Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback? He's playing Jacksonville. They look terrible. Your Texans really took it to him in what was honestly sort of a beating. What are your thoughts on Jacksonville and Lawrence, and then how are they going to perform against 1-0 Denver?
So I have Bridgewater as QB 14 next week. It's a good matchup, good streaming thing. He could be okay. I think Stafford probably beats him. I mean, I don't really have a strong take there. I have Stafford as QB 11.
Okay, well, what do you think about Jacksonville? Are they going to be absolutely terrible? Are they going to win like more than 5 games? Like, what are your thoughts on that squad?
I think they sort of maybe win 3 or 4. I don't
Okay,
know. I think they're a bottom team down there with the Texans. Um, yeah, that AFC South is going to be real.
terrible.
So yeah, like I'm try to think through my head like who's the best of the worst down there, and it's like
Well, the Titans, you should just pencil them in as the winners, no matter how bad they looked in Week 1. That
yeah, that's not a bad take, but
It's sort of
but
it's
yeah,
like the NFC East where you think to yourself, which one of these guys are going to go a game above 500? Okay, that's your winner.
yeah, 100%.
Do you feel
I mean, I don't have high hopes for sure.
so? Do you think that Austin Eckler and Singletary are going to combine for more points than Barkley plus Sanders? To me, Singletary he's solid and he's way better in a PPR, but he's barely RB2. Like I think his floor is like 5 points, but his ceiling is like a dozen. I don't really have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, the wild card here is I think Eckler could be in just an absurd like Eckler could like drop 30 and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, the Cowboys are
Um,
going to get ripped to shreds on defense.
so his ceiling like really depends on what the Cowboys decide they want to stop. If they want to stop Williams and Keenan Allen, then that means that Eckler will be the huge beneficiary.
Well,
He wasn't super involved in the pass game last week, which was sort of surprising to me. I mean, because this is a guy who has shown as much upside from the passing game as he has from the rushing game historically. I don't think that that's going to be a normal thing. I would expect him to average 5 targets probably the rest of the season. And in some of these games where it's a real shootout, I mean, he could be up there 10, 12 targets. Wasn't uncommon last year, or historically when he really got going. So yeah, I mean, Eckler's tremendous upside. I still probably edge you out because I think Barkley, like Singletary sucks. Like just all the backs for Buffalo suck, and yeah, I don't think he'll get the job done against your 2 guys, basically.
interesting. I also think that it's worth noting whenever you talked about what will the Cowboys elect to stop, hopefully they stack 8 in the box the whole game because I have Keenan Allen and he has Eckler.
Yeah, I have, funnily enough, I have Eckler as RB 18, Miles Sanders as RB 19. So like I have those guys real close in my rankings. My comment about Eckler was more about his ceiling potential than his median projection, if that makes sense.
I see.
Singletary I have as RB 43, projecting for 5. So I'm real low on him.
Yeah.
So obviously by matter of deduction, if I have Eckler, edging Sanders out, and Singletary going for 5, I have you favored by numbers too, not just my gut feeling. So
The man with the numbers, the most quantitative person I've ever met. Absolutely love you, Spence. So Adams has got a
just a couple of outliers.
Just a couple of outliers.
I'm feeling a team name change for the season. Don't call me AB though.
You gotta, yeah. At least we know when you change yours, it'll stick. It won't fucking change its story in the morning like a broad. But you gotta consider here, Adams is gonna get 10 plus. If you thought Week 1 was an aberration, playing Detroit.
Wide receiver 1.
Okay.
Next week.
Love that.
Is what I have him at. So it's not just like my belief, like my projections are bearing out. I mean, that's a soft matchup. Green Bay bounces back. They look amazing. All the rumors about them sort of die.
Yeah, like that. And if they look like shit again, oh, it'll be such a fun next week's episode.
And I can get dogpiled on and whatever. So.
No, believe me, all the dogpiling will be on the Packers.
Fair enough.
He's way more fun to make fun of than you, Mr. Crybaby on the Pat McAfee show for 3 hours a day. 40 million isn't enough. Where are my weapons? I came into the league with Donald Driver and Walker. It's like, you look at the fucking people Rodgers has played with. This is a guy who just has been on like Pro Bowl tier offenses in many years. When you look at the litany of weapons he has, the idea that he like wanted them to blow like the 28th overall pick on like some middling receiver is laughable. Anyway, Kittle's playing Philly and Goddard is playing San Fran. That's a cute little mirror matchup.
We can just wrap this up pretty quick here. I think you edge him out in every position group other than tight end. I think Kittle is marginally better than Goddard, but they're like, I mean, Goddard isn't like drawing dead against him, Yeah. It's sort of a mirror, which is interesting. But yeah, I think Kittle will probably become a little more involved, punch it in once. I think Goddard won't punch it in. I don't know, get 60 yards maybe, like serviceable, but like nothing crazy. Yeah, just not nothing too crazy.
You want to throw out a score?
Think you bury him, I don't know, 105 to 89.
101 to 85, me is my guess.
Yeah, I'm in the same ballpark.
Okay, we got Weston and the commish. The commish looking pretty goddamn weak here. What jumps out to you from this matchup?
Yeah, I'm not too high on the commish here. I think there's a couple candidates, like I said, for trading for tight end. Whether he's doing it with Gronk, with me, with what is this, Mark Andrews, with AB. Like, he's a guy who I think could benefit a lot because like Ebron is just he's not gonna get it done. Like I'm curious. Ebron's so low on my list, I literally have to literally search his name to like try to find him. So I have him.
List, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. So I have him as I actually didn't break out wide receiver and tight ends, but I have him projected as scoring 3 points and as receiver 126 next week. So like, yeah, he sucks. Basically TLDR. So yeah, that's interesting. Ironically, Hurst might somehow be less talented, so I'll have to search him real quick. Yeah, he's lower somehow. So yeah, the battle for the bottom here at tight end. Both of these guys could benefit from trading for a tight end.
Definitely.
I guess Jackson potentially as well too, because I think there's a couple guys who are pretty deep at tight end, who would be more than willing to move one. At the top, I'm sort of looking. Mahomes obviously better than Wilson. The Williams is interesting by Wes. I know why he's doing it. Last week he was very involved. I think Wes might not have dove as deep into it as me and seen that his routes run were not as high as Swift, but I mean, there's lots of stuff to go around, and I don't think the targets will go to their wide receivers. So that's not like the end of the world. Yeah, I'm surprised he's sitting Robinson. I don't know what that's about. I think I would probably start Robinson, but maybe he thinks he doesn't need to. Maybe Robinson is in more of a questionable spot, and he thinks that he needs just the floor of the ceiling. Who knows, man. I would think Robinson would be the clear cut starter here, but who knows? But still,
None of these backs are gonna blow your doors off. Like Fournette, Taylor's solid, but I think the Colts look pretty hapless. And then Zeke and
yeah,
Williams, a lot of big names, a lot of people that have had good seasons in the past. But going into this week, like this has got to be a running back core where they're gonna get their owners like 15 points or less or something.
yeah. I have Williams going for 5.5 as RB 35, and I have Elliott as RB 17 going for 9, and then Taylor's slightly higher than Elliott, and then I think Fournette's probably slightly high. Yeah, I have Fournette is slightly higher than Williams. So I guess I'm edging marginally on running back Clap for here, but like I'm not super excited about either core. On wide receivers, I think I edge out probably Wes. Actually, those are some soft matchups. It's literally a coin flip. I think Diggs in particular recovers. I think Thielen plays well, but not as well as last week. Yeah, maybe marginally Clap for, because that's Arizona is gonna really could lock him down, because they sort of locked down Tennessee a bit. I don't know. It's tough to say. I don't have a strong take. They're pretty dang close at wide receiver. The real interesting thing and the difference maker could be this Drake start here. That's big, because remember Josh Jacobs is out,
Right.
and Drake was getting a lot of work in the receiving game. He was actually lining up wide a lot and playing with Jacobs a lot. Jacobs is sort of like the between the tackles guy. Drake's going to be sort of like their wide receiver running back.
A Darren Sproles type, as it were.
Yeah, I mean he'll steal some work from Josh Jacobs, but I think he could get a nice little workload this week, and I think he could easily edge out Robinson, and definitely has a higher ceiling.
So overall, you're going with Weston here, right?
Yeah, Weston, but it's super close. It's basically a coin flip.
Okay. I'm taking Weston as well. Let's go to Lily and Jackson, to which Lily has already fucking locked up a droopy 21 from Graham Gano, which is fucking
Insane.
Crazy.
Dude,
250-plus yarders.
Yeah, I don't understand. It's like in
He
terms
got
of
one
like
last week.
in terms of couple of outliers, as they say, like Lily's like luck in fantasy has to be like off the charts.
She's
like,
so lucky.
Like, I mean, people can say at some point it has to be considered talent, but like every year it's just like it would be one thing if she was doing like Weston drafts guys I don't like a lot, but then he does well, right? Like
He does the waivers a lot too.
Yeah, but like with Lily, it's like
20-point swing, by the way.
It's like she'll like stuff like this. It's like she'll just like draft a guy like 5 rounds early, like Kareem Hunt, and then he'll like get her 15 week 1. I don't know, stuff like that. I think her running backs set up nicely against Houston. I think Cleveland's well set to stomp Houston's face in the ground. Those running backs could combine for 40. I think Josh Allen is in the bounce back spot. I think he could easily get 20 plus, maybe 30. I think Antonio Brown is against soft Atlanta. What a great bounce back spot for him.
Well, yeah. Well, he did have a good week against Dallas, remember? But yeah, he'll have another big week.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was AJ Brown. Either way, and Antonio Brown's still in a good spot,
Yeah.
regardless, against Atlanta. Hopkins real involved. I still think they have so many weapons, and that I still don't love Hopkins, but I mean he'll be good. I just mean relative to ADP, not his individual talent. Because we saw Christian Kirk catch 2 bombs. We saw that Moore, that flashy rookie, be involved. AJ Green got looks.
Yep.
Chase Edmonds got looks. I mean, there's too many mouths to sort of thing. So I think that offense will. It's sort of like the Bucks a little bit, but like he's sort of in the Godwin role. So like, I don't know and that I guess the difference is Tom Brady is not a rusher. So if Murray starts rushing a lot, that could really eat into some of the upside for some of those weapons. You know what I mean? More so than Brady, who's never a rusher, so all of his touchdowns are passing.
Yeah.
That's sort of why that's a worse situation. But yeah, I'm sort of looking down the list. The interesting thing, ironically, I sort of hate the Aguilar start here by Lilly. I think it's really dumb. But I think the Cook start's even dumber. Not.
Can you give your reasoning?
So we know Hawkinson is the center point of his offense. Cook is going to be involved, and he has a soft matchup. But like we're talking about the wide receiver tight end 1 versus like the tight end 1, wide receiver 3 or 4 on his team. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And Hawkinson's and if you pull up, can you go to where you can like look at projection real quick? Like go to Lily's team and like look at projection. Like you can't see the projection the way the whatever view you're in now. Sorry, I don't actually know what.
Well, usually,
you might have to just pull up her team really quick because I just want to walk through something. Go to projections.
Thank you.
So here, if you look, I can tell you exactly what happened. She's using the Snickers optimize button. Go look at Hawkinson's projection.
Yes, the Snickers.
So this is a great example of
0.25 difference. You're right.
Yeah, and let me pull those two guys up real quick. So I have Hawkinson. Just I mean, I know this isn't the most invigorating radio, but just for.
Well, we were talking earlier about how much Hawkinson's involved in the offense. Detroit has shitty receivers, and even go ahead.
I actually have them pretty close as well, but to me, some of these projections are baking in assumptions, and I think the assumptions for Hawkinson, it's like hard to think he's not going to be super involved. So I have Hawkinson as like 1.5 points higher than Cook. I have both of them projected really well because of matchup adjustments and that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't understand why you'd start Cook here. Like from a draft capital perspective, from an involvement, from a floor perspective. I mean, I could be completely wrong. Maybe this wins of the week and everyone can laugh at me, but like, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that like Hawkins, especially considering she has points out I could know already, and she's looking for floor over ceiling at this point. Like when you get 21 out of your kicker, you're looking to ice the game.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know. I think that's a little bit of an odd decision personally, and I think like I'm not that high on Aguilar.
Me neither.
I think like they have Myers. They have tons of weapons. He had a good week, but like I just feel like there's waiver wire guys she could have picked up. I don't love any of her bench options, but that's sort of the weak point that I see. Interesting. I actually think I would start Hines from this list over anyone else. This is a guy who we saw healthily locked into a timeshare, but very involved in the receiving game, and we're seeing this more and more frequently in today's NFL. Just because someone has an RB by their name doesn't mean they're playing like an RB. And I saw him getting a ton of receiving work. I think he has a higher floor. I don't know. I just don't have confidence in Aguilar. That's really what it comes down to. Beasley's sort of interesting too. All that, and then I didn't really cover Jackson's at all. On Jackson's side, ironically, I was about to say he should be able to edge out Aguilar. I know why he's starting Hamler. I think he's their wide receiver 3.
Well, Judy got hurt.
He was, I think, 3rd or 4th in routes run. He should get some more work with the injury, but I don't know. He's just one of those guys. Doesn't move the needle. Fant, they've got 2 tight ends involved. There's a lot of mouths to feed in their non-explosive offense. Yeah, it's Jacksonville. Jonnu Smith is not a name that I'm a huge fan of
Oh, we know that.
either.
We know that one.
Kappa. So I mean, he could be okay, but you got to edge. Even though Lilly has shit tier production from those two positions, you got to edge them over those guys. Obviously, 21 out of kicker, you got to edge it there. I'm sort of looking. I think Metcalf I might favor over Hopkins just because I think it's more condensed in terms of like who it can go to. Um, he's got big play potential. Woods, as I said earlier, he could be more involved going forward, but I got a lot of red flags that Kupp seems to be the guy. Antonio Brown was super involved against the soft Atlanta. You got to favor him.
Yep.
Running backs, things get a little interesting here. So McCaffrey is in a matchup against New Orleans, who just shut down Aaron Jones. They're not going to shut down McCaffrey, but maybe they were pretty good last year against the run, so they could really stifle some of his upside.
That's true, and Carolina did not look explosive at all on offense.
Nope.
Yes, when McCaffrey touched the ball, he was effective, but it was more volume than anything. He didn't really look that explosive.
Yeah, basically TLDR. I really don't want to do it, but I think I have to marginally edge out Lilly at the top here. So basically, I have Lilly edging Jackson at every position group other than maybe wide receiver, which Jackson narrowly edges her out. It's still anyone's game, but I think you got to have Lilly by about 5 points here.
I agree. I think that even though we saw the Browns,
it's more of a matchup thing than a talent thing. Like if we rearrange these matchups, I think I could favor Jackson, honestly.
Agreed. You got the Cleveland, even though they sort of choked their lead last week. You think of Cleveland as the team that leads the league in rushes on first down. And whenever they establish a big lead, you would think that that would be conducive to their style. So I was sort of floored to see the Chiefs come back so easily. But I think this is definitely going to be a win for the Browns. They're going to get a lead on Houston and keep running.
I mean, those guys could easily get 40, and it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, they got 40. Be like, oh yeah, they got 40. You know what I mean? Like that they got some real upside.
And as far as Antonio Brown goes, let's just think about a couple years back when he was recording his coach on a telephone call without him knowing, and the whole helmet fiasco and like the blonde mustache and fucking blue dreads. Like it seems like a completely different guy. You put one of these diva receivers with Tom Brady and all of a sudden they're on their best behavior. What do you think about Tom Brady's ability to work with these high attention seeking diva like receivers? Of course, Randy Moss had the best season in his entire career in 07 with Brady. Like, what do you think about Brady's leadership ability and his ability to work with these kind of guys?
Nice setup. I mean, it's his biggest. I mean, if you think about the things that define Brady over his career, I mean, it's his biggest plus attribute is his ability to bring these guys in and get them to buy in. I mean, he's basically never had a problem with another player his whole career, and he's had a long-ass career, like one of the longest ever, with a lot of high-attention guys. Randy Moss, right?
Deion
Branch, Antonio Brown, even Gronk, you could argue, is a high-attention sort of locker room disruption.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you see these guys not only buy in, but like respect him as a leader, which like those are sort of the intangibles. I know I sound super cringe right now, but like I feel like a lot of quarterbacks don't display those even top guys don't have those attributes where they can get guys to buy in, like they might on paper look good, but then things come out or whatever.
Start losing a couple games and the hurt comes out.
You basically have never seen that with Brady. And even when he left the Patriots, like a lot of guys when they're leaving, you hear a lot of noise around them leaving.
Yeah, especially when they've been there that long.
Yeah, and you heard a little murmuring, but you think about it like it was like they were murmuring and then he was gone. It was about the least murmuring you'll ever hear, and it's like it's not crazy because like you think about how long they were probably going back and forth on contract stuff. That probably happened over 2 years, off and on. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there were lots of opportunities for leaks, and you never saw any. And I think a lot of the leaks are caused by the QB's crybabying. And so I think that some of that's Brady being a consummate professional. And I think that when we think of his career as like the undisputed GOAT, right? That'll be something that people will forget about. That like I was thinking about as we talked about previously before this TWIF. That I think is probably his greatest skill and is what's defined his career. Because he's got these guys who had turmoil across the league. He gets them for nothing and turns them into a Pro Bowler, right? Or turns them back into a Pro Bowler in a lot of the cases. I don't know, it's very interesting.
Oh, and you make great points there. And remember, when Brady left the Pats,
I mean, the other interesting name is Andez. I mean, the guy's literally a gangbanger murderer, and like
you never saw Hernandez yelling at Brady, "Hey, I was open," and Brady come back with "Shut the fuck up," like Donovan McNabb and T.O. Another interesting thing is you were talking about when he left and what people were saying. A lot of people said, "Oh, well, it was all Belichick. You know, Brady's too old. He's gonna falter with the Bucks." And we saw the Pats have a losing record, and we saw Brady win the Super Bowl. So the guy just keeps winning. Yeah, I don't even know how you could root against him at this point. And I'm actually going to favor Lilly in this matchup because of the running backs getting to play Houston.
Yeah. I have her running backs going for 21 to Jackson's 18. I have Hunt as RB1 this week.
Okay.
Sorry, Chubb. Chubb, not Hunt.
You mean one out of all the running backs, not on Cleveland, though?
Correct. One out of overall running backs.
Right. Okay, so we can move on. This time it's you versus Cam. So unfortunately for you, you get to play Cam.
Yeah,
in the first
I was
3
gonna
weeks.
say why could it be a bye week?
Everyone talks about how easy Cam is, and obviously the numbers bear that out. But whenever you're in his division,
it'd be interesting to look at his splits. I bet he has an above 500 win rate for the first 5 weeks.
oh, and his win rate in the middle weeks when you actually have to use your brain and pick people up is when he's
and just start people, literally just start people.
Those, like, if you go back and look at the history, it's like 1-5 he beat Wiley, 1-5 he beat Wiley. Like the only guy he can beat is me in those weeks. So you'll have to play him at full force. Dak lost Lyle Collins. He's probably second best lineman at right tackle. I don't know how much that will affect him. I think he'll still put up decent numbers. Cook is still healthy. Montgomery is still healthy, and they're playing Cincy. You've got a little bit to worry about, frankly, but good thing his tight end already locked in less than 5. Like, what are you looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, you called it. I have Cook. I have Cook as running back 2 and have Montgomery as running back 7. So I have them as the highest projected 1-2 running back this week. So I mean that's a real threat. They both have. Well, I guess Arizona might not be the softest matchup ever, but like it's not like a scary matchup either. So yeah, I have him. I have Kamara as running backs 16 and Gordon as running back 20. Combining for 18 or no 17. Sorry,
Never
17
live on stream.
Yeah, I'm trying to I've got like decimal points. I'm trying to just roughly total them versus 24. So I have him beating me at running back by 7 points. I mean, his team is a monster team. Like I was one of the guilty parties saying like this is a team that like scares the crap out of me. If like he was like if this team was in Weston hands, like oh my gosh, he'd be along here for the rest of us.
So even though it looks scary now, are you going to go out on a limb and say that he will finish 500 or better?
I think he will finish better than 500, but I don't think he'll make the playoffs.
Okay, that would be the first time in the history of the league Cam had a winning record.
I think he'll be 1 win above 500. But I don't even know if this is statistically possible. But I think that Seagouch will somehow have the tiebreaker of points on him and make. I mean, or I will. One of the two of us will, and then me and Seagouch will. I think the wild card will come from our division. I think it'll probably be me or Seagouch if I had to guess. And from quarterback, I have Dak as QB 10 this week, and I have Brady as QB 6. So I have myself marginally making up some of those running back points, two of them to be exact from those positions. Going down the list, Brown, I think, is in a good spot against Seattle. I think Moore is in a decent matchup with who's that?
New
New
Orleans?
Orleans. Let me see where these guys grade out. I don't feel like searching their names. So I just eyeballing it. I guess I edge out Brown here, but pretty close. And then I edge Ridley over Johnson,
Agreed.
and it's not close on that one. I think it's like 2 or 3 points.
And Waller is obviously going to get more than 4.5. We'll probably get over 10.
Yeah, I think that's really where the matchup sort of dictated. We're pretty close on the top when you sort of take all the position groups, but here at the bottom is I think where the gap really gets wide. I think the Bucks against Atlanta, that's an insane matchup. I don't have defenses in front of me, but I'm guessing they're probably my highest projected defense
Well, Atlanta
this
looked
week.
absolutely wretched last week, and they looked as though they didn't even know like the basic strategies they were going
They'll
to use.
they'll play back more this week, but there'll still be lots of sacks to go around and turnovers to go around. I think Gay is in a real nice matchup.
Yeah, LA's
Tucker will be
LA's going to
Tucker will be
kill
good
Indy.
too, so that's probably about a wash because Kansas City matchup. Baltimore, I think, will struggle to punch it in because so many of their weapons have gone down, but they'll still be able to move it. So, yeah, pretty close. But here, obviously, Waller. I mean, Waller's got to be projected for at least. I don't know what I have him for, but yeah. So I have Waller. I have Waller as wide receiver 11 this week, but he's not a wide receiver. He's tight end. So like, I have him projected right behind Kelsey. So I have him going for 11. Um, so yeah, that's sort of going to be the difference. And then I think for Chase Edmonds, as I sort of predicted, he's involved in both facets. He's more productive than Connor. I think that they may potentially lean on him more as he continues to be very efficient with his touches. He might not be a 20 touch guy, but I sort of think coaches like to see production. I mean, Robbie Anderson, I mean, I think you just pulled it up. Yeah. I mean, he did good last week, but it was fluky. And this could be a guy who might
Lays
not
an
do
egg.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he could score again, but even if he scores, he's sort of like, I think his production will be similar to Chase Edmonds. So Chase Edmonds is a higher floor. I have myself by like 5 to 8 this week. I don't know how you're feeling.
I'm
I
feeling
think
I'm
that
feeling
my
you.
bottom half is going to be where the game is won. Probably on the top half will be pretty close.
I got you at 111 and Cam at 99. That's my prediction.
Wow, that close. I think that's probably fair.
All right, we can move on to. It's so hard just to not call him no fried. Like I'm just like
Yeah.
just change that shit back,
I
yo.
mean, who cares? We know he doesn't watch these anyway.
Yeah. I mean it still needs to be pointed out how abominable it is. So Kyler Murray, great week last week. I'm really feeling like he's gonna have another one of those type performances. And
Yep.
Kirk Cousins, very average. You got to edge Murray, right?
Murray's my QB1 this week.
Excellent. So what else jumps out at you about this matchup? Sterling Shepard had a pretty good week again. That's sort of interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think Sterling Shepard will end up being wide receiver 1 for the Giants, which might not mean a lot some weeks, but some weeks it will. And I think he's getting a lot of volume. And I think that No Fried's team is surprisingly good outside of the streamer quarterback situation, especially considering. I mean, he's got Julio on his bench for one, and two, he auto drafted. Which sometimes auto draft can be better at drafting than the owners themselves, ironically. So yeah, I think here the big point of contention is tight end and quarterback. I think Christian buries him at quarterback. I mean, I probably is a season long QB1 at this point. He's going to be insane. Um, yeah, he's just going to be crazy. But I think Kelsey might be able to make up those points at tight end over Tanyan, even in a soft matchup. Tanyan never really blew me away. Like, he was productive in a pure fantasy, but from an opportunity standpoint, he never really blew me away. And he'll have big weeks, but I think he was overdrafted in ADP by about 2 or 3 rounds this year, based on like
Hype and
the
dick
other.
ride.
Yeah,
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 I
and
agree wholeheartedly.
and so, like I think of it as like Tanyan was in a pretty similar boat as Gronkowski, but Tanyan was going 6 rounds like earlier than Gronkowski, right? Like, in terms of, he came on towards the end of the season, and I would argue Gronkowski has had a longer tenure of proving it as an elite player, and
Oh,
Tanyan
of
was sort of like
course.
a flash in the pan player who came on at the end of last year and was just sort of super productive on marginal opportunity. Not to, like, I'm not saying he like can't like be okay this year. Still think he might edge in the top 15 guys, but I just think where he was going, you're drafting him like a top 8, top 6 guy, and
Yeah.
those little things add up. So anyway, that's pretty close. Oh man, dude, this matchup is like insanely close as I'm sort of trying to work it out in my head.
Yeah.
I think I have to edge out Christian. The idea being that wide receivers are more inconsistent than running backs, so I think the floor of his running backs edges out the ceiling of no frieds wide receivers, but it's real close, like probably within 5 points. What you got?
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part. I think the Saints will do well versus Carolina. Greg the Leg is going to have over 10. Chris Carson looked good in the opening week. They're playing hapless Tennessee. He'll have over 10. Don't expect shit from Tanya. The tight end disparity is going to be the defining factor of this, as you accurately pointed out. Think Godwin will get 9, just above Shepard. Cooper Kupp looked phenomenal. Pencil him in for a dirty dozen. I do not think Chase will catch a touchdown this week. I think he's going to have an off week, even though he looked great
I, I,
initially.
I have Cup as wide receiver 10 and Kelsey as wide receiver 6.
Okay.
So
Yep.
yeah, like, I'm pretty high on the wide receivers on that side.
Well, you said Cup was going to have a career year, and for Christ's sake, they're playing Indy, so he's got to be set for a big
Yeah,
fucking
yeah,
game.
yeah.
And the running backs, if Henderson didn't have such a good matchup, it would be like, well, Seagosh looks scary. I agree with your point earlier about Gibson being overdrafted by about a round. People were sort of enamored by his top 10 ranking last year and the fact that
And
he's
he
not
and he
splitting
came
time.
on at the end of the year.
Yeah,
There's sort of a recency bias with fantasy, particularly in small sample sizes, where people cling into the most recent data point, which a lot of times is how they play in the playoffs, how they play going into the playoffs if it's a non-playoff team. So I think that's what sort of happened with those. And not to say that they suck. It's just like, I mean, it's so arbitrary what you think is fair value for people. But that was sort of my gut feeling on those guys. And I could be wrong. But yeah, sounds like you're in the same ballpark too. So it's not like a crazy thought.
oh, I definitely agree. And it's not as though he's going to be terrible, but expect a lot of weeks like this between 6 and 11 points where
Yeah.
Washington doesn't look that good. And this is an offense that really revolves around Scary Terry, even with the backup quarterback. The backup quarterback down there is very serviceable, especially compared to Fitzmagic. That's like a 6 out of 10 guy compared to a 5 out of 10 guy. So if I was Seagots, like whenever you start a running back like this, the idea is like, oh, like pencil him in for 10 plus. But I think Gibson is
Let's
going to have.
let's look at Sigach's bench really quick if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
of
You
course.
keep talking.
Remember, Seagouch has the 2 receiver injuries, which is sort of restrictive, and Seattle's backup isn't going to play, which I think makes the Chris Carson start in the other game even better. Carson's due for a big week, but Gouch doesn't
I
have a lot of options here.
Yeah.
Williams
I
against
don't.
Dallas is an
I,
okay one.
I, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to help my division rivals out. I was just curious what his bench was.
Oh well,
I am sort of surprised that Julio Jones is benched. Like, that's a pretty. I agree with it, but it's still. I'm actually curious what I even have on that. Julio over
Cup and
Cooks over
Cooks.
Julio. Yeah. Let me pull it real quick. Sorry, I know this is horrible radio, Kappa. Yeah. So I have Julio outscoring Cooks. So I'd probably go back to Julio. But I mean, I get it's not like the Cooks is an egregious start.
Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't get too high on the Texans in general just because they beat the
yeah,
shit out of Jacksonville with the rookie
yeah.
quarterback.
I mean the Cooks pickup. I think he picked him up was a good pickup, but it's one of those things that like let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Like let's see the Texans prove it before we buy in, and this is coming from a Texans fan. So
What do you think about him benching Aaron Rodgers versus Detroit? Obviously, we don't.
insanely stupid.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins, for Christ's sake, if you're gonna draft Rodgers, you can't bench him after one bad week.
Especially against a Arizona defense that just showed some real chops against their previous opponent,
This is
the Titans. So it's like,
it's
yeah, I mean,
surprisingly
Cousins,
reactionary.
yeah, I mean, as I've said, I never really thought Mark was the. I never really his ownership never really impressed me, and this is a great example of it. The Cooks thing is sort of a coin flip, but I would still probably ride with Julio. The Rodgers thing, I think that will likely lose him this week, and
Agreed.
you'll look back. We'll look back last week when Rodgers bounces back in his 25, and we'll just sort of laugh and be like, "What was the idiot thinking?"
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers is playing Detroit for Christ's sake. Like, I'm almost sitting here like, oh, if you're not going to start him versus Detroit, fucking trade him. Like, if you don't have
Yeah.
confidence that he'll come back against the Lions at home, like, give me a break. So,
And it would be one thing if he had sort of like if he had like Herbert as his backup or something,
yeah,
like I would get it then. But we're talking about like a guy in a run first offense who like has demonstrated incredibly low floors historically. Like what did he have last week?
22.
22.
But
Maybe he's improved, but like I
it
don't know.
was
I'm
in
not,
no,
not
no,
that high.
no. It was a fucking overtime game where he got extra opportunities, and even then, it's only 22.
So I guess the man with the numbers, I've got to play into my tendencies here. So I'm gonna pull up Cousins and just see. Sorry, just screwing with my head. So I have Cousins is QB 25, one of the worst, even worse than like streaming quarterbacks, and I have Aaron Rodgers as QB 9 next week.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes we criticize people in this league like, oh, they're just going to start the same people or they're going to stick with their guys too long. This is on the opposite end of the spectrum. This is like some serious reactionary shit.
And like I guess you can disagree with my numbers all you want to, and like I'm not saying they're perfect, but my numbers are baked in from from Vegas team totals and Vegas prop lines. So like this is it's my view a little bit. Like I massage them around some of the assumptions, but like that's what Vegas is saying. Like Vegas is saying Rodgers is a QB 9 still, and that Kirk Cousins is a QB 25. Like
Yeah,
it's not like he's starting a QB 15 over a QB 10. Like that's like starting a guy who shouldn't even be on your team over like a top starting quarterback. It's just insane to me. And I think it'll lose him this week. And I think he will get bullied by me and Seagouch in the division, and him and Cameron will end up both missing the playoffs.
to me, it's just humorous that these are two like heavily established names too. These aren't like a second-year guy and a rookie
Yeah,
guy. Both of
it's not
these
like
guys
he's
are
taking
known
a flyer on
quantities.
Cousins. Like we know what Cousins
And
is.
we know what Rodgers is too, especially
Yeah,
against Detroit at home. So I think that Seagout should really put the lumber to mark this week.
yeah. I think he wins by 5.
I,
Um,
I got the Gouch 110 to 85.
Ooh, I don't. I think it's closer than that. I got it like 100 to 95. Some of that's baked in off of like the Najee Harris stuff that I'm counting on a big bounce back because of the snap participation last week and touches. So
Sounds good. Final matchup of the TWIF episode. We got the King of Funny versus A Ramp. Ben, of course, coming off of a nice win, and they're essentially both projected 99. So what jumps out at you, Spence?
starting Jameis Winston. That's a bold take. I don't hate it. I've been a Jameis truther for a long time, but it seems maybe a little early. Who's his? What? Yeah,
Herbert.
that's a horrible.
Yeah, you got to start Herbert here. He's
I
going to have one of
I
the biggest weeks in
I
week
have
2.
I have Herbert as QB 7 this week. I have Jameis as like QB 20.
It's
So it's like
absolutely baffling to me that Aaron would do this. Carolina's defense isn't that bad. I would say there may be like
and
10.
Jameis showed last week that they're going to use him as a game manager as much as possible.
Yeah,
Like when they get a lead, they're going to run out the clock and like just sort of.
Peyton's keeping him on a short leash.
Yeah.
Of course, he got to see him as a division rival, and he knows his weaknesses and tendencies. Yeah, he threw 5 touchdowns, but look at his yard totals. He wasn't the old style air it out Winston that a lot of people are used to. So I think that Aaron's starting him thinking 5 heckin' touchdowns. Can't
If
mess
he
with
gets
that.
yards and he showed rushing upside, he hasn't shown historically too.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't been a big rusher, but he got 40 rushing yards. I will. This is sort of off topic of the actual matchup here, but I think that that's one of Sean Payton's biggest strengths. We're talking about Tom Brady's biggest strengths. Is Sean Payton has demonstrated this incredible ability with a lot of different quarterbacks outside of Breeze to, I think, Taysom Hill, for example,
Right.
Teddy Bridgewater. There's another guy, a backup who had to start. Even their running backs, when their backup running backs start, he knows how to dial in play calling and sort of play the offense to the player versus a lot of coaches, they have their backups come in and
Same playbook, same builds. Be Tom Brady, LOL.
yeah, exactly. And I think that we as fans don't understand the adjustments that he's making fully, especially like obviously I sort of understand, but your more casual fan doesn't understand that's you think like, oh, it's so obvious, but like most coaches don't do it.
Right.
And I think that's Sean Payton's biggest strength.
Utilizing his talent.
Well, just raw play calling and play design in general. I think he's the best in the league, honestly.
Agreed. Him and Andy Reid.
Yeah, Andy Reid is good too. Yeah, they sort of have different styles, but yeah, they're both up there. But yeah, that's something that I think, just side topic, I think goes really unappreciated about Sean Payton is his ability to tailor the offense to the player and make it where if the player has weaknesses to sort of disguise them or limit them. So
That's a phenomenal point, Spencer. And the thing that jumps out to me about the benching is that the Cowboys have the softest pass defense in the league.
yeah, it's a horrible. It makes no sense.
And a secondary full of corners afraid to hit. This is a joke defense, the worst defense in Cowboys history last season, and they just lost to Marcus Lawrence. If you're going to have Herbert, you should be slamming him this week. Fucking bet the Herbert yards overs. Fucking start Keenan Allen. And if you don't have a good tight end, start Jared Cook. This is going to be a huge week for the Chargers. They're going to put up crazy points against Dallas. So the benching of Herbert makes little to no sense to me. To me, whenever I look at Aaron's decision making and No Fried's decision making, a lot of it is predicated off of the fact that they lost and they're frustrated. Because, No Fred put up 100 points and lost last week, and all of a sudden he's fucking benching Rodgers. And then Aaron has like the best matchup Herbert's going to have all season, and he's benching him. It's not like Winston put up 40 points. Yeah, he had 5 touchdowns and no interceptions, but, he wasn't putting up like insane amounts of fantasy points. You see 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, you're like, what, did he drop 45? No.
I mean, it's a wait and see thing. Like we sort of know that Winston still has a tremendous floor in his interception turnover prone. And like we saw one game, yeah, it's a promising game, and I buy into him long term. But like, why take that risk? If he blows up, Aaron loses. Herbert's in an amazing spot. Like, I obviously have him as QB7, so like that means that if anyone could pick anyone they wanted if we redrafted quarterbacks for this week, like half the teams would have worse options than Herbert. Yeah. For starters, not bench players. So yeah, that's sort of like a weird decision to me. And then the other thing that's sort of weird is, I like Landry. Okay, I was gonna say I like Mitchell for San Fran, as a flex, but I realized that his other flex is better, so that's a bad take. Um,
Well, what do you think about Lev Bell? Like, this is a guy not even on a team that Aaron picked up. Like,
that's not true.
oh, he got picked up?
He's in the
Oh,
Ravens
oh
carousel.
yeah, 'cause all those guys got hurt.
My thing with that was there's about four guys who can all win that job, and Bell has had his shot at multiple jobs and has demonstrated like not to be like that much of a threat. And like there's four guys, and it could just like the Ravens already shown a propensity to timeshare, so it's like you can use your roster spot on 50-50 bets or handcuffs for guys who, if the backup gets hurt, you have elite running backs. Like your guy becomes elite running back. It's just it's sort of one of those things that people get too cute in fantasy. It like happens all the time. People like, especially like,
Just say it.
especially Aaron, they just like think that like, oh, I've got to think 5 steps ahead of everyone. Especially in our league, I mean, half the people aren't even like paying attention. So like, you don't have to like be super cute. You can just do the obvious stuff, and like that's all. Like you don't need to like do crazy stuff. I mean, if you have the spot, pick up Bell. But like, as someone who literally couldn't make a roster move hardly because I didn't feel like I wanted to drop anyone. There's plenty of guys available who I think are more speculative and in better situations than Bell. I don't know.
Agreed.
Sort of a weird tangent, but
What else jumps at you about this matchup before we conclude the episode?
I think this one will be well. If Aaron was starting Herbert, I think this one would be really close. I think he has 3 really strong wide receivers. Landry's elite without Odell Beckham.
Elite,
pull
really?
up. Yeah, from a fantasy perspective.
Well, yeah, of course.
I have him as wide receiver 19 this week. Yeah, he's a monster. He gets 10 touches a game. I mean, my thing is just like when I say elite, it's more of like opportunity, and obviously not talent. Like he gets 10 touches. I think in standard leagues he averages 14 points a game when Odell Beckham's hurt over the last 9 games, which like that's pretty insane for a wide receiver. Justin Jefferson had a bad week last game. I think he bounces back, and really can do some damage this week. Has incredibly high ceiling. Like could score 20. Same thing with CeeDee Lamb. That's an insane like spot for him.
And Gallup's hurt, so he'll get more.
Gallup's hurt, so it helps his deep ball potential. Which especially he's like CeeDee Lamb. I've always thought is a really good like PPR guy. Even last year when I was down on him, I just sort of thought from a standard scoring perspective he struggles because they have so many deep ball guys with Cooper and Gallup, who sort of are more favoring the deep ball. But I think he might get worked in a little more into deep balls with Gallup hurts. That's definitely helpful. But yeah, I mean Aaron's in play for sure, but I think I got to edge out Ben here. Just I think his wide receiver or his running backs are all consistent, high floor guys. I think he can get enough production out of Hill and Higgins. I don't love the Higgins start, but who are his other options?
His other options are these guys: Gage, Marquise Brown.
Go to Marvin Jones real quick. I think he's sort of an interesting start. That might be going too deep, but he was pretty involved last week. He's sort of in the same situation as Higgins, but I think that I like that matchup a little more. Maybe I don't know. It's tough. It's not like he's doing anything egregious by starting Higgins. It looked like that Chase guy was going to be the guy. I mean, it's going to vary week to week.
Higgins did catch a tutty, but yeah, he was all over Chase. And
I mean, this is what I was saying. Like a lot of the guys in our league are super reactionary to actually stat lines. He only had 5 targets. Like that's not amazing, I don't know.
I know Ben, and I know that he's been high on Higgins and believes in the Bengals in general. So
I believe in the Bengals. I just think that there might be too many mouths, and it's sort of rough when you can get more funnily offenses. But yeah, I still probably edge him over Aaron, though narrowly, especially if he's going to start Winston. I literally, Aaron listens to these, so he might actually do it. I literally think if he starts Winston, he loses. If he starts Herbert, he wins.
I'm of this almost identical opinion. It's that
Like I
much of a
think
big deal.
this is a coin flip like matchup to me, and we're talking. I have it as literally a 4 point swing between the two guys, like in terms of mean projection. But I also think that like the real thing is the floor ceiling outcomes. I think that like Herbert's floor ceiling outcomes are way higher than Winston's. You know, where like even if he has a bad game, I don't think he's as turnover prone as Winston. And I think like Herbert could go for 30, and I like it like wouldn't be crazy, you know,
Oh,
and that could literally
he's gonna light up the boys. You can
yeah.
fucking pencil that one in. He's gonna have a great game against Dallas.
I think Jackson might struggle this week because they've had so many issues with their weapons.
Lamar
And I think
Jackson, you mean?
yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
And I think that they're gonna dial it. Like I think they're gonna dial in a lot of spies and that sort of thing, and really try to. I mean, that's not gonna stop him, obviously, but I think
Slow him down.
yeah, I think enough weapons have gone down there that it's just gonna be tough for him to pop off too much. So
Baltimore has a little bit of trouble playing from behind too, because like they like
yeah,
to run the heavy sets and control the clock. Kansas City's so fucking explosive that if Lamar Jackson turns it over and Kansas City establishes an early lead, a lot of their build orders are sort of shitty for like multi-touchdown comebacks, which could affect Jackson's production negatively.
yep. So yeah, basically TLDR, real close. I think if Aaron starts Winston, he loses. If he starts Herbert, he probably wins.
I agree. I'm gonna edge it to the king of funny, 100 to 98.
Nice.
You have any closing thoughts? And maybe like teams to watch out for, division predictions, or anything like that?
I mean, I think I've already made my division predictions pretty clear, at least for my division.
You think you and Gouch will advance. So what do you think
Yeah,
about mine and then the top one then?
that's tough. I think Ben's probably the best in your division. I think he's the deepest at running back, which will make it easier to get through the bye weeks, as other people will really struggle to get production out of that. Um, and out of the top division, I think you're not dead by any means. It's not. It's I have to pick one person.
Yeah, of course.
You'll be in contention.
It's only week
Cra-
2. I'm not
cra-
asking you to
cra-
write it in stone.
crazily, and I just it's like it's your podcast. So it feels like I'm slapping you in
No,
the
I
face
don't
by
give a
literally
shit.
not mentioning your name.
I don't care if I don't care if your guest
I
says
was just
I'll
throwing
lose
that out
every
there.
game.
So I think this is crazy. I think Lily's team is like gonna win that division, which is insane because that's the division with Jackson and Weston. I just look at that team and I'm just like that like she's gonna be tough to beat on a week to week basis. I think her team management might hurt her down the stretch. Bye weeks might be tough. But I think Hines is going to be a serviceable guy for bye weeks. I guess that bye week for the Browns is going to be tough.
Yeah.
But
He is Baker too.
but like she can just lose that week, and I feel like I feel like off defensive and kicker she's gonna be decent. Yeah, I mean I just sort of look at her team and love every position other than the flex, and I think she'll get enough out of that. I don't know. It's sort of weird, but she looked so good last week. I mean, not to say obviously Jackson and Weston aren't dead, but I think
Well, no one's dead, Spencer. It's week 2. Everyone knows you're not saying that.
yeah, I just think
That's the nature of giving predictions.
Jackson has serious holes at tight end, and I think contrary to his belief, I think he's going to struggle to get production out of that streaming as someone who's done that the last 2 weeks. And I think he'll be able to get points out of flex. There's enough out there, and Woods I think might take a step back. I mean, not that he'll be bad, but he'll be like low end wide receiver 2 instead of high end wide receiver 2. But he'll manage his way and he'll do good. And Weston sort of same thing. Tight end super weak. I think that's sort of a consistent theme among the top teams and the bottom teams is those point that like I told you before the season started when I was doing the removal value of having that guy. I mean, Waller's sort of an outlier, but when you think about like 19 targets at tight ends, I mean, even like getting 8 versus getting 3,
Yeah,
like
no,
all those,
19's fucking insane.
like all of those, like even like an 8 versus 3, sort of versus a mid tier versus a streaming guy, like that doesn't seem like a big deal, but each one of those targets is worth like 0.7, 0.8 points, and like that's a couple points every week that you just can't capture no matter how good you are. I sort of learned that my worst 2 seasons ever, the last 2 were sort of I was doing the streaming tight end build, and I just found like, I mean, it could be confirmation bias or whatever, but it just didn't seem to work, and I was real frustrated by that, and I might have reached on Waller, because I think I drafted him pretty early, but like
Can't
I
argue
knew
with
I won.
19 targets, man. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, but it's 1 week. He'll come get closer to 10 probably. But the point is, like, I think that's sort of why I believe in Lilly is that Hawkinson pick. I mean, that's going to be insane. Like, if he's their wide receiver 1, getting 10 targets, getting like a droopy dozen every week. I mean, when Jackson and Weston have to play them, play Lilly, I mean, they're going to have to make up those points at other positions. And Lilly's other positions aren't that weak either, other than flex. I don't know. It's going to be an uphill battle for them. And she's 1-0, and she right now has the points tiebreaker. I think it also depends on. This is interesting. Go look at what week they play and what week the week Browns bye is, because for tiebreakers, that could be very impactful down the stretch. And people probably don't want to. We probably talked too long, so you're probably gonna wrap it up pretty quick. But I think that this is, if we're going to do division predictions, this is sort of big.
13 week 13.
That's huge because that's the divisional games.
Yeah.
So whoever she's playing probably just gets a bump.
It's Cam joke.
Oh, really? It's not divisional games.
Yeah.
That's sort of funny.
Which is really weird.
That's actually big for Lilly because
big for
by
Cam.
that. No. It's big for Lilly because Cam is so bad that his team literally might have so many injuries he's dead by that point.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So like Lilly, and he has 2 big buys. So Lilly, even though in theory she seemed like she could easily win this. So yeah, that's like best case scenario for her if you think about people she has to play.
True.
So yeah, that isn't a bump. Yeah, I think it's tough to pick against Lilly, as like crazy as the take as that is, for the reasons I stated. That I mean, she's not going to outmanage Jackson and Weston, but particularly Jackson now, he has to make up 40 points and get the tiebreaker against her, which I'm just like, that's going to be a tough. It's going to be a tough road to climb, in my opinion.
True. So you heard it here first, folks. Lilly, the division favorite, and Cam will have his first winning season. You've been a great guest.
All the hot takes.
Yeah, this was a good, very thorough episode. So make sure you leave a like and a favorite. Spencer, say easy.
Easy.
Easy.